Welcome to Express Bites, a series of short video workshops by Youth Express. Hi, I'm Ian. I'm at Youth Express. Here at Youth Express, we have been helping youth transition into the world of work since 1993. What we're doing here is a series of short video workshops to help you guys actually get a job. In this series, we're working on the resume. Today's workshop, we're looking at those final tuning tips on how to make sure your resume is just right for each job. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to share a screen. Let's get started. Okay, tuning and final tips. So first thing, do I need to change my resume for each application? Simple answer is yes, you do. You need to tailor your resume to every job application so that it responds to the specific requirements of the job you're applying for. That means as you're going from different jobs, even if they're quite similar jobs, same sort of apprenticeship, different employers will ask for different things. So we're just going to make sure that our resume does tie up neatly to their ad so that that new employer can see that your application is really for them, not just a general application that you're throwing around to everyone and anyone, okay? You may not need to change much from job to job, particularly in the same sort of area. So if you're looking at, so say, I'm really going to be hairdresser, and you're applying for 4 or 5 different hairdressers apprenticeships, they're all going to be very, very similar to each other, but there might be just a couple of little differences in there that will make the difference between you and the next person. Do I need to change my resume for each one? Yes, we do, because what we do is we put the most relevant things first, always. I've said this in each of the categories. So when we talked about education and qualifications, we talked about putting the most important things for this particular job at the top of the list. So if I'm applying for a chef's apprenticeship and I've done food tech and hospitality at school, in my list of subjects at school, I'll have them at the top, always. We just change these things around. So if it's the same sort of job, like 4 or 5 chef apprenticeships, they won't change a real lot, you'll see, but they might, each employer might ask for something just a little bit different. Include an example of the achievements that meet the advertised requirements in this particular job. So we read the job, they'll ask for certain things. That's called the job selection criteria. And as they ask for something, you need to have an example that matches their request. And it might be a welding apprenticeship and then a second welding apprenticeship, and they might ask 2 little slightly different things. So your example for the first position and your example for the second position might change. Make sure you keep all that key language in there. I talk about this a lot. Make sure that you match the language of the industry. So if you're heading into a chef's environment, make sure you use that chef, food tech, hospitality, kitchen language so that they know you know what you're talking about. That's much more impressive than if you're just using general terms, and it shows that you know something about that industry, so you're genuinely interested in the job, not just hopeful with your fingers crossed, okay? Use your opening statement to link your experience and education to the requirements of the job. So if we do have that opening paragraph in our resume, I've talked about this before, if it's there, make sure that opening paragraph matches the ad. So read the ad, check your opening paragraph, make sure they pair up together. That's important. And finally, what not to put in your resume. This is really important too. Some things we just don't need to have there. We don't have our private information. We keep some things to ourselves. So you're never going to put in things like banking details, not in an application. If they give you a job and they're going to pay you, they'll need that, but they don't need that in the application. So you keep your private information to yourself until the time it's needed. You don't need to have your birth date or your gender or your address. But sometimes that's in your advantage, because if they are asking for a local person for some casual work at maybe some waitress work at a local pub or club and say, oh, local required, sometimes having our address there to show that we're local, that helps us. And sometimes the job asks for a junior. So sometimes that the date of birth's in our advantage, but you don't necessarily have to put all those things there. Read the ad, see what they're after, see what's going to give you the greatest advantage. That's the advice. You don't need your medical history, okay, or your medical status. If you've got some medical issues that need to be resolved, you can speak with them at the interview or after you get the job. You don't need to put that in your resume. Don't make typos and don't have factual error. What's a factual error? Something that's not true, also known as a lie. Don't do it. Don't lie, don't make up stuff, don't pretend. Tell the truth, you'll be found out, and if you're found out, then that will cause you a bit more strife than you think, okay? So get your resume true, correct, accurate. Don't make things up. Don't have pictures in there. I know my PowerPoint looks great, I've got all these photos, but this is a PowerPoint. It's not a resume. A resume is there for data and information. So we don't need pictures unless they're really asking for that in a job ad, a photo of who you are. We don't do that. Don't put the content in the header or the footer. I've talked about this along the way. The header and the footer of a Word document, sometimes the content there disappears when you send it through electronically through an online system. So if your only contact details, your phone number, your email are in the footer or the header, they won't find it, okay? Don't put tables. It's just too much information. It's messy. It's hard to read. It takes too much time. I've talked about this before. You might be a job interview or a job application in the mining industry. It might be 1,000 applications. They're not going to read through and try to work out what your table says. Here's some things. Don't do fancy formatting. That's a big no. Just don't do it. And this is what I've talked about. 1,000 applications. They're trying to read through them, and you've got colors and fancy fonts and different sizes, and it's impossible for them to read. They're just going to go, nah, I've got so many to pick from, I don't need to work through this one. So don't do that. Keep it clean, simple. I talk about this all the way along. Clean, clear, easy to read. That's what we've got to do. Get the font size right. I've got in here 11 and 12. Check it out. Get it on your page and see what it looks like. Once again, that's a clean and clear and easy to read. Don't have tiny little font because it's too hard to read. They haven't got the time to sit there and work through that, and they'll miss things. Don't have massive big font because that looks like you're still in kindergarten. So don't do that either. You've got to get it right. We use bold here and there. Don't underline, because if we underline, as you can see here, it goes blue, becomes a hyperlink, and they might click on that. If it's an electronic application you've put through, and it might go to a web page that's inappropriate. So we don't underline so something doesn't turn into a hyperlink. It's just easier to go bold. All right. Here's some basic fonts to pick from. Arial, Calibri, Verdana. They're usually fairly reliable. Stick with those, easy to read. And the very last little bit, if they actually ask you to save it as a PDF, do that. If they ask you to save it as a document, do that. All right, just follow those instructions. All right, there we go. I think that's the final wrap up. Go back over, check out these tips, freeze frame it if you need to, make sure you get those little bits right. I hope this has helped you on the journey, the last little bit of the resume. As always, give us a thumbs up and like us on Facebook, please. Also, I always say this in the comments below, tell us what school you're tuning in from. We'd like to see how far our people are following along on this journey. Thanks for watching, and go back over, replay these, go back over all of them, replay them, freeze frame them, use the tips there. Hopefully you'll have a great resume, and happy job hunting.